this is part 2 of solving multi-step equations. What to do when you have fractions and decimals. Most humans don't like dealing with fractions and decimals. So if we can make it easier so we don't have to deal with them, you're less likely to make a mistake. One of the ways that you can do that is you can clear fractions or decimals before you solve. There are 2 methods for solving equations when you want to clear the fractions, and there's 1 method for solving equations when you want to clear the decimal. Let's take a look at the fractions first. The first method for clearing a fraction, for clearing an equation of fractions, is to get a common denominator. So if we look at this first example, m over 4 plus m over 2 equals 5/8. I could just look at the left-hand side of this equation and get a common denominator between 4 and 2, which happens to be 4. So m over 4 would stay, plus, in order to get 2 to be 4, I have to multiply it by 2, which means I have to multiply by m by 2. So I have 2m over 4, and that's going to equal 5/8. So now my equation looks like this. M divided by 4 plus 2m divided by 4 equals 5/8. I can simplify this right here by just taking m plus 2m and getting 3m plus 4, which means 3m over 4 equals 5/8. Now I just need to solve this for m by simply multiplying by the reciprocal. So to get m by itself, I'm going to multiply by 4 over 3. If I do that to one side of the equation, I can do that to the other side of the equation. These 3's cancel out, these 4's canceling out, leave me with m. If I look at this here, I have 4 goes into itself once, and it goes into 8 twice. 5 times 1 is 5, 2 times 3 is 6, so m equals 5/6. Now that is certainly a viable way in which to solve this equation. It may not be the fastest way. The second method is to clear your fraction, is to simply get rid of the fraction, eliminate the fraction. And that doesn't mean just ignore it, or erase it, or pretend it's not there. It literally means take a look at it and say, out of 4, 2, and 8, what would be a common denominator between all of those? It would be 8. So I'm going to take this equation and I'm going to multiply everything by 8. Because by doing that, I'm going to eliminate my denominator. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to space this problem out a little bit so that you can see what I'm doing. I multiply every part of this equation by 8. I'm going to multiply this by 8 over 1. I'm going to multiply this by 8 over 1. And I'm going to multiply this by 8 over 1. Now, 4 goes into itself once, it goes into 8 twice. 2 times m is 2m. 1 times 1 is 1, so there's no denominator there. Plus, 2 goes to itself once, and it goes into 8 4 times. 4 times m is 4m. 1 times 1 is 1, no denominator again, equals 8 goes into itself once, and it goes into this 8 once. 5 times 1 is 5. So I now have 2m plus 4m equals 5. Simplify this, 6m equals 5. To solve this equation, I simply need to divide by 6. I divide by 6, I divide by 6, m equals 5/6. Both methods got us the exact same answer. I believe that method 2 is a little bit easier to use. I prefer taking this and multiplying it by my common denominator and getting the entire equation cleared of the fraction. And totally eliminating the fraction is the very first step, and maybe at the end, the fraction will come back into play. Now, decimals, you can clear equations of decimals by multiplying by powers of 10. If we look at this first equation here, I'm going to look at the last digit of every number that's got a decimal. Tens, hundreds, this 5 is in the thousands position. This 5 is in the hundredths position. And this 5 is in the hundredths position. So the largest decimal, or the smallest decimal if you want to look at it that way, the decimal that has the most digits in it is in the thousands position. It's the first number right here. So if I wanted to make this be a whole number, I'm going to have to move this decimal point 1, 2, 3 places to the right, or multiply it by a 1 followed by 3 zeros, or 1,000. So I'm going to take and multiply this equation by 1,000 to clear my decimal. So I'm just going to erase a few things here so that I can actually read my equation again. So I'm going to take this equation here and I'm going to multiply it by 1,000. Now, be careful. Make sure you multiply all the equation by 1,000. That means this piece here, this piece here, this piece here. So 0.025 times 1,000 is going to be 25x. So I'm going to move the decimal point 3 places to the right. 1, 2, 3. 22.95. If I multiply it by 1,000, 10, 100, 1,000. It's going to become 22950. So it's 22,950. Well, equals, if I take 23.65 and multiply it by 1,000, 10, 100, 1,000. Have to add a 0 there, and you get 23650. Now we have no more decimals, less likely to make a mistake. To solve this equation, we're simply going to subtract 22,950 from both sides, canceling that out, leaving us with 25x. And if we take 23,650 and subtract from that 22,950, we have 700. And now to get x by itself, divide by 25, divide by 25. So x equals 28. This second equation here, if I look at it, all the decimal places are in the tenths. So if I took this entire equation and multiplied it by 10, I would clear all my decimals. 1.2 times 10 is 12. 3.6 times 10 is 36. 0.3 times 10 is 3. And 2.4 times 10 is 24. So now I have a basic multi-step equation with no more decimals. Now I will look at it and see my like terms. I have a 12x and a positive 3x. 12x and 3x is 15x minus 36 equals 24. I will add 36 to both sides. And I get 15x equals 60. So solve this, divide by 15, and x will equal. As you can see, it's not difficult to clear fractions and decimals. Let's take a look at this equation. Okay. We're going to clear by multiplying by a common denominator, or we can look at this third example. There's two ways to do this one, but it's probably just as easy to multiply by the common denominator, since this would be over 1. The common denominator is 2. So if I multiply both sides of my equation by 2, these two 2's will cancel out. 18 times 2 is 36. So 36 equals c plus 5. Subtract 5, subtract 5. 31 equals c. That one was really quick. Once you got rid of that fraction, it made it much easier to deal with. In this next example, I want to find my common denominator between 4 and 2, which would be 4. So I'm going to multiply everything by 4. So I'm going to take my 3/4 y and I'm going to multiply that by 4/1. I'm going to take my 1/2 y and multiply that by 4/1. And I'm going to take my 5 and multiply that by 4/1. This is the most common mistake people make, is they'll forget to multiply the whole number by the fraction. Don't forget to do that. That'll be a huge problem if you don't remember. These 4's cancel out. 3 times y is 3y. 2 goes into 4 twice. 2 times -1 is -2y. And 5 times 4 is 20. So here's my simplified equation with no fractions in it. 3y minus 2y is just y equals 20. And I am simply done at that point. It is not a complicated thing to do to solve these equations.